Good morning. Wow, you all didn't get any sleep at all. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. There's a teacher in me the whole time. Good morning.
Good morning.
A little bit better. A little bit better. I expect by tonight, after Stella has presented, when we say good night, it'll be much more rousing. But that's why I don't play start. It is a great honor to open this day. All of these days have been historic. But today is for some of us who have been working for literally 3 or 4 years on this, it's an almost imaginable happening that this group, a network designed specifically to bring together grassroots representatives in approach, but not necessarily organizational representatives from the struggles of 8 peoples and beyond, are here in person for the first time ever. We have, yes. Listen, that's also not rousing enough. After we hear from them, there'll be, and during each of them, there'll be, I think, much more rousing applause. It is an extraordinarily historic moment. We understand that there is colonialism. We understand that there is neocolonialism. We understand that there's patriarchy and capitalism and many other forms of oppression. At the same time, there is something particular about ongoing, continuing military occupation, about 21st century continuing direct colonialism that affects a relatively small peoples on the planet. And we hear bits and pieces of disjointed information. We hear, Puerto Rico is the last colony, or Western Sahara is the last colony on Africa. But neither of those two statements are accurate. And in a struggle to look at the question of 21st century ongoing colonialism and military occupation as a whole, and to look at grassroots civil resistance as an ongoing conversation about solutions and shared practices towards solutions, the Occupied Peoples Forum, with the support of IPRA, the Resistance Studies Networks, and many other groupings, including a grouping in Germany, which I always call by MS because I can better remember the name, but I know they have a newer updated name, which I'm going to ask Kristen to shout out from the back. No, when I say Germany, from Sweden. I'm sorry, yes, indeed. But you knew who I was talking about, and now the rest of you know why I'm not pronouncing that name. So with thanks, I don't know what he said. So with thanks to all of those folks, and without further ado, we're going to have Maggie say a few words, just a very few words about solidarity, and then we will begin. I'll just say the 8 peoples, we understand, is not the only 8 peoples facing some of these issues. We recognize that there are multitudes of indigenous peoples that have questions about sovereignty. We recognize that there are a variety of cases that are a little bit, I wouldn't say unclear, but that are a little bit atypical from these 8. We heard a presentation some days ago looking at the history of Biafra and Yoruba people in Nigeria, and the whole question of the legitimacy of the nation state itself, of course, is still coming under scrutiny. But for this beginning moment, this early moment in this forum of occupied people, we have 8. I want to start by simply saying what they are, and then you'll hear from 7 of them this morning. But we'll start with the one who we could not get here, and who in some ways the most difficult to get information from and to get out of their country because the level of daily occupation is so intense. And that is the people of Kashmir under the military occupation of India, allegedly the largest democracy and the oldest democracy in the world. And I put that word democracy in big quotation marks. So with love and thoughts and solidarity with the people of Kashmir, today we will hear from representatives of civil resistance movements in Tibet, in Kurdistan, Rojava, in Western Sahara, in Ambazonia, in Puerto Rico, in Palestine, and in Western Sahara, and in West Papua. I will say that our Palestinian representative is still arriving this morning, so we hope, inshallah, that he will come here early. There were issues on the airport last night. We're hoping this morning we will not have any, or we'll have very few. But aside from that, please help me in welcoming all of them again. And then we'll hear from Maggie, Solidarity, 21st Century, and then again we will begin. Thank you for joining us here. It's wonderful to be here together on this morning.
Thank you very much, Matt. And to the participants that are here, good morning, everybody. I hope that you are as energized as I am. Where is the who are you? Where is he used all up for his energy last night. So I think the theme that we are dealing with in this conference is the transition from conflict to peace, lessons from South Sudan. And I want to make reference to yesterday's visits to the schools as well as to ONAD. And what was very significant is that, firstly, for those of you who were unable to join us, was the fact that we have seen an organization literally build solidarity on the ground amongst its people, amongst the people of North Sudan, under the most exceptional circumstances. So if there is an organization that can vouch for solidarity and then demonstrate its solidarity in the 21st century by going to young children and extending the value of peace, we know that the future of the South Sudan may have immediate problems that we are dealing with in terms of militia and conflict. But the future of what ONAD is doing is able to protect the value and moral system of the South Sudanese people. I was very emotional yesterday because there was a young child that had spoken in the school with the pink and green. I don't know the name of that school, Light or Moses. Seventh-day Adventist, yes. And she said she learned about peace from the Peace Club that was managed by the officer from ONAD. And she hoped that her parents could also learn about peace. And that is that was groundbreaking for me. So I think the issue of solidarity, what does solidarity mean during the process of attaining independence, freedom, self-determination, or autonomy? But does it stop there in terms of our 21st century analysis of solidarity? Because the thing we need to appreciate and understand is that it is exactly at the moment that power is brokered and handed over that solidarity needs to be deepened. Because you need to ensure, for example, I just want to quickly say, the military action of Morocco, of Israel, of China, and I think I sent a video to the group, is unbelievable, as Matt says, on a daily basis. But we need to extend our solidarity over and beyond the primary stages of wanting to acquire Our solidarity is a lifelong and endless journey, and we need to build and create grassroots and develop people around us to be able to carry the baton forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maggie. Our first speaker, Tenzin Tsundue from Tibet. Yeah, come on now.
Good morning. Because this is the first presentation, so it has taken a little bit of time in setting up. But thank you very much. Firstly, the organizers giving me this opportunity to speak about Tibet. I've very less time, so I'm going to speak fast in case there is any translations. Just be mindful of this. Do you hear me in the people in the back? Yeah? Okay. Yeah. So I'm avoiding use the mic. The case of Tibet is a very unique and mostly not talked about, because this is a freedom struggle from a country that has become that has created a structure of dependency for almost about 160 countries in the world, China. And no one, therefore, wants to talk anything against China or for freedom for those occupied countries. Especially in Africa, because many of the African countries have created a network of trade. In a way, much of the natural resources are today being bought by China, and some of the governments benefit from this. So therefore, and yesterday, as we were going around, a strange thing was happening, just particularly to me. I could see people's kind of attention to, as we see, we are an international group of people. So different responses, especially from the kids, to different people. What you didn't see was what I was undergoing, and I was actually going there without any introduction, almost as a possible Chinese. And there was a lot of resentment against my face. Not that I was representing China, but because very often I could hear people, quietly saying, Jackie Chan, Chinese, Ching Chang. You see, this is the problem. In Asia, in America, Black people are discriminated upon. And in this country, because people have very little knowledge forget about Tibet, even about China. So there is a mixed response. One, there is about kind of a curiosity to this face. Two, there is already a rising resentment against the Chinese. So I was actually kind of quietly facing something that I didn't do, that the Chinese did. So anyway, today I'm going to talk about Tibet. I'll briefly go through the history, conditions of occupation, and how has it been undergoing. And towards the end, I will also speak about individual organizing and preparedness as activists, as non-violent activists. I'll speak about that. When we talk about Tibet, very often people think it's a small country somewhere near Nepal or Bhutan or near India. Yeah, but among the students, some of the students I met yesterday, most people actually do not know Tibet, but everybody knows the Himalayas. Everybody knows Mount Everest, the tallest mountain in the world. And that's where I come from. So that was a kind of a deductive way of introducing. So Tibet lies there right in the heart of Asia. Look at this map. It's a Google Earth map. If we superimpose it, the linings, you see here India, which is 3.2 million square kilometers of land, and there's Nepal and Bhutan and Arunachal Pradesh, coming down to Burma, and towards the west, it's the Karakoram Mountains connecting to Kashmir. Over there, further up, the Karakoram Mountains in Pakistan, Afghanistan. To the north is East Turkestan. That's actually the country of the Uyghur people. East Turkestan, which is under Chinese occupation, and to the north is Mongolia. This is where the Silk trade route was, and to the east is China. The real area of China is 3.5 million square kilometers of land, but after occupying all these other countries, China has become 9.6 million square kilometers of land, the third largest country in the world. But once you get there, Tibet is at the altitude of 4,000 meters above sea level on an average. It's a country which experiences 9 months of winter. And during winter, it's just snow, and snow. Minus 40 and 50 degree ice and snow. And therefore, it is also very often called the water tower of the earth. And it is truly the roof of the world. Mount Kailash, which is considered the center of the earth, is there in Tibet, closer to India border. This kind of snow field where you see only snow, and the prayer flags that you get to see. Much of the Tibetans, 70 to 75% of Tibetans are nomads and nomads, and there are also farmers and traders, but majority are nomads who live with yaks and sheep, and particularly the animal yak. Yeah, it's found in Tibet. Tibetans are warrior-like. They ride horses. They were the people who first created an idea of empire, riding horses, using bows and arrows, very skilled, this kind of warriors. They were the first who created an empire in the heart of Asia. At that time, they used to control certain parts of China, Mongolia, and their occupation went right up to Afghanistan, Iran. There was a point of time they created that kind of empire. But after receiving Buddhism from India, the entire nature of the civilization changed. Where they used to think that you need to occupy land and kill people, now they understood the true courage, the true source of happiness is not by killing people or occupying land. It is to kill your anger, hatred, and greed. Then a country, a civilization can truly gain happiness. This is something we understood from India, and we received these teachings from India. We became a Buddhist country, and even today, 98 to 99% of Tibetans are Buddhist, and this has become our identity. This has become our culture, nature of a civilization, and this is how we have been living. But we lived in isolation for far too long. We were not connected to the rest of the world. First World War happened. Second World War happened. Tibetans had no idea what happened to the world. And once there was an American fighter jet, they crash landed in Tibet. Tibetan government gave a warning to the United States, and how dare you throw your dirt in our country? The Christians came to give education to Tibetans. We said, we don't need anyone. They threw the British out. And that was only country which had not received Christianity, nor was occupied by any country from outside. It was only in 1959 when China invaded Tibet, and that's the time on modern time when Tibet lost its independence. And since 49 onwards, today almost about 70 years, This is how we have lost independence, and this is how we're living there. I'm now going to talk about this. These are books. These are Buddhist textbooks. It's written like this. It's written here. Jagarkedu, Arya Manjushiri, Rekedu, Papa Jambe Yangi, Tambe Teyang, Ngapur Jupa, Jambe Shunur. I'm trying to read it because I'm trying to give you a feel of our Tibetan language. This Tibetan currency, we used to trade with India, Nepal, Bhutan using Tibetan currency. Now these are seen in museums. Tibetan national flag, one over there. This was created in 1916. At a time when the First World War was going on, when half of the world today who are independent, 206 independent countries, half of them were not independent at that time. Many of the countries in Asia and Africa were not independent. They were under foreign occupation. We already had created our national flag. Then the Chinese invasion happened. Mao Zedong came in and they invaded, they plundered the country, destroyed, and mainly because by using brutal force, they destroyed monasteries. 6,000 monasteries were destroyed. We lost 1 million population. You know, ours is a very small population. It's 6 million Tibetans. But out of that 6 million, 1 million Tibetans died in starvation, torture, death, and summary public executions. We lost. And therefore, this led to His Holiness the Dalai Lama escaping Tibet, coming to India. And then in India, it was the government and the people of India who received us as neighboring countries, and you know, in solidarity with the people, we created a school in India, and this is my school. I studied in this school, and in the fourth row, and the fourth little boy over there, this one, that's me. I was in fifth standard. I was in fifth standard, and that was the time I understood what colonialism is. You know, it's not out of textbooks. I just understood that we are in exile. Our country is back in Tibet. Our parents escaped Tibet, begged for food and came out. And now we are hoping to return to our country one day. But for that, we need to educate ourselves. We need to be organized among ourselves. So I made a promise when I was in fifth standard that when I grow up, I will work for the independence of Tibet. I'll do nothing else. No business, house, home, family, nothing. I will do only the independence of Tibet. And that's what I've been doing. I'm now 49. Look at this. Right in the center is His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He was 24 when he lost the independence of his country, escaped into India as a refugee. And first thing he did after coming into India was set up schools for Tibetans. That the Tibetan children, they may be born in India, but they are raised and grow up as Tibetan, with Tibetan sense of identity, culture. Because for us, that culture is our main identity. That's what we fight for. So this is how chaotic it was when they first came from Tibet. They were wearing sheepskin clothes and coming to India, the heat of and jungle of in India. People died of mosquito, diarrhea, dysentery. Many people died, but we survived. People worked as road construction laborers. My parents were coolies. And my mother tells me that I was born in a tent on the roadside. And when I was like 1.5 years old, when I started to crawl, I must have been very restless. My mother used to tell me that she used to tie a rope around my waist and peg it on the roadside while she broke rocks and laid the road. This is my family. Right there is my father, my mother, my sisters, brother. I mean, look at the sun. That's me. We used to be in South India, and we used to have only papayas as a vegetable. You know, I was a very poor family. You know, there was refugee camps, but it is India who gave us that shelter and support, and we set up schools, hospital, handicraft centers. And this is one of the first Tibetans doing a protest rally in India. And we didn't know what protest rally is. What are we supposed to do? We didn't know. We learned from India how to say a slogan, and someone else would say it. And here is this Indian the Tibetan lady carrying the Tibetan national flag in front of the police, and this is right in front of the Chinese embassy. We didn't know. We just landed over there. We didn't know how to protest. We learned from Indian protest sloganeering. One man building climate control protest when Chinese prime ministers, presidents come to visit India. This is one of it. This is almost about 9-floor high building, and I did a protest. I spent entire night up in the building to come out and protest the next day when the Chinese Prime Minister was going to give a speech there on the ground floor. So I attracted much more media attention than the Chinese Prime Minister. So I ended up in jail for just for 3 days. But what was worse was fighting the court case, which went on for 11 years. I went to Bangalore, South India, to appear in the court for 37 times. So as an activist, you know what you're having to pay. You need to be prepared for it. Now, let me go back to history. In the history, Tibet was free and independent. This is one of the maps created by the Americans. You see right there in the middle of Asia, there's Tibet there, Hindustan, China was like this. This is the reality today, though. Overall, 9.6 million square kilometers of land is China. This entire piece of land is Tibet. But if you actually cut up the places and see the reality, you see this is Tibet. You see this is Tibet there, East Turkestan, and Southern Mongolia, and Manchuria. And overall, put them together, this is China. But out of that, we actually see 60% of China's landmass today is occupied country. And that's how China is making cheap made in China products. They are able to make cheap made in China products because they use disenfranchised, almost slave kind of a labor camp in China and take away natural resources from these occupied countries. From southern Mongolia, they take oil and uranium. From East Turkestan, they take away natural gas, piped natural gas. From Urumqi right up to Shanghai, there's a pipeline going all the way, 11,000 kilometer pipeline. This is how they are plundering. What happened in Africa and Asia earlier is happening today. And therefore, Tibetans protested. And it was literally, machine gunning that happens. Even today, a situation is the same there. Daily, there are these kind of, intimidating acts of police rallying across the city, in towns, just to make sure that Tibetans are not protesting or doing anything. Tibetan nomads there and China, they cut, clear felling trees and taking trees to China, and therefore creating floods in India and Bangladesh and further down in Mekong also. Now, the biggest issue today is mining. Mining is happening at such a mass scale that mountains, pasture land, and valleys are bombed and dug up. And this kind of mining is happening. And this mining, especially lithium, China is the biggest producer of lithium-ion batteries that goes into all our mobile phones and laptops. And they are mining lithium from Tibet. And what they're doing is they are settling down Tibetan nomads into artificial villages like this. And they are told never to go outside these artificial villages. So traditionally, one nomad would cover almost about 10 to 11 hectares of land for grazing. And Tibetans never owned land. They just lived on the land. So in one season, they were one part of the land, or another season, they were somewhere else. Now, what the Chinese are doing is they are settling down Tibetan nomads into these kind of matchbox kind of houses, and therefore taking over the land, and these are then bombed and mined. And this kind of thing is actually reminds me of the reservations, how they that was created in America, Canada, and also in Australia, how things happen like that. This is exactly what's happening in Tibet. And therefore today, some of the protesters used to do something else, but now some of the Tibetans are resorting to self-immolation. They're burning themselves. A very unique, shocking, terrifying, painful death. But what the Tibetans are doing is they're giving their life, but refusing to take the life of what is called the enemies. So this is right in the heart of Asia. It's the snowfield. You see here is the source of some of the most important rivers in Asia. So this is our case here. In my conclusion, I still want to say just 1 minute. See, as an activist, I share this among all of you, and I'm sure some of some of you have been to prison more times, or all of us are experienced differently. Some work diplomatically, some work in prison, some write, some do petitioning. My experience up until now is there is a difference between independence and freedom. Independence is a status, and there are many countries who are independent but not free. Because independence is a status and freedom is a process. And freedom process is forever. No country is independent and free forever. And that freedom should be earned by people's effort, making accountable your government. And in order to make your government accountable to all the corruption and everything, people should not also be corrupted. You see, the free keeping and maintaining freedom is a constant process. What we have seen in our freedom struggle is that there is an internal, personal, spiritual process of freeing ourselves, liberating ourselves. If that happens, this also gives you a sense of freedom. And then independence, once where you declare your nation free and independent, raise your flag and do the border and all of that, that's superficial. That's easy. And therefore, in my conclusion, I want to say our country today may not be free, but we feel free. The internal churning, the internal liberation process is what we are trying to maintain. So with this, I conclude. And I'm sure there will be a space for discussion later. And of course, between other movements, we can continue to have this kind of discussion. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Tsundue, free Tibet, free Tibet, free Tibet, free Tibet, free Tibet. We're going to quickly bring up two dear comrades from the group Nova, the youth movement in Western Sahara. Please welcome Mohamed Lagdaf and Ali Salam.
This one? Yeah.
It can't get bigger. It can't get bigger. You want a bigger one? Also, let's just say something technically for people at home live streaming or watching the video later, and for people here. The slide piece is imperfect. Some of the slides have not gotten in. Some of them get in a very small scale, and they're meant as a background visual. We could double the length of this and miss everything and focus on the slides, or we could focus on the people. So please be aware, we will get files of all the slides, all the photos, and we will send them in a packet to the WhatsApp group, and we'll have them available online. So all of the slides are sort of as a background, but you will also get them in a version that will be easier for you to see and that you can look at and pour over later. So this is just sort of brief snapshots during the presentation. All right. Without further ado, Western Sahara.
Hello, everybody. My English is very, very late, but I can try. Okay? Mr. President, on behalf of myself and the Nova Group, we extend our most sincere thank you for the generous invitation you have sent to us. It is a valuable opportunity to convey the voice of Sahrawi people who suffer serious human rights violations of children, women, and the elderly are living in the streets of occupied cities of Western Sahara before the eyes and ear of the Sahara of the world. The Moroccan reserve forces carried out all forms oppressions and prevented peaceful demonstration and imposed at siege on the region and prevent the visit of rights organization human to the occupied territories again. The people only because they wanted to the peacefully express their opinion and demand freedom and independence through you. The rights of people and international organizations, we call on all parties to condemn all human rights violation by Morocco and make the monitoring of human rights one of the priorities of the MINURSO mission in Western Sahara.
مرحبا بكم سيداتي سادتي، أشكركم على هذا الحضور رائع جميل. سيدتي من جمعية النور، هذه تعريف عن الصحراء الغربية. تقع الصحراء الغربية شمال غرب أفريقيا، تبلغ مساحتها 284,000 كيلومتر مربع، ولها سواحل طويلة على المحيط الأطلسي. عاصمتها مدينة العيون، يحدها من الشمال المغرب ومن الشرق الجزائر ومن الجنوب موريتانيا، والغرب محيط الأطلسي. يبلغ عدد سكانها 1,000,000 نسمة. تعتبر الصحراء الغربية بلد غني بالموارد الطبيعية، إذا اكتشف الفوسفات سنة 1947، وتمتلك أكبر ناقل للفوسفات في العالم، ولديها ثروة سمكية هائلة، حيث تعتبر شواطئ الصحراء الغربية من أقنى شواطئ، بالإضافة إلى معدن الحديد. كما أكدت الدراسات وجود غاز والنفط في السواحل الصحراوية. وإذا كانت الصحراء الغربية محل أطماع الاستعمار دائما، وفي مؤتمر برلين 1884 الذي قسم فيه دول الاستعمار العالم الثالث إلى مستعمرات، كانت الصحراء الغربية من نصيب إسبانيا، والتي دام استعمارها زها قرن. وفي 1970 يوم 17/6/1970 قامت انتفاضة صحراوية كبيرة ضد الاستعمار، فمنعتها إسبانيا بوحشية. وفي يوم 10/5/1973 تأسست جبهة البوليساريو كحركة تحرير وطني. وفي يوم 20/5/1973 اندلع الكفاح المسلح. وفي ماي 1975 وفدت الأمم المتحدة بعثة للتحقق لتقصي حقائق إلى الصحراء الغربية. وفي تقريرها بعد الزيارة أكدت إجماع الصحراويين على الاستقلال، وأن جبهة البوليساريو هي القوة السياسية الوحيدة في الصحراء الغربية. وأمام هذا الوضع أعلنت إسبانيا نيتها للانسحاب من الصحراء الغربية، حيث أبرمت اتفاقية مدريد سنة 1975 يوم 14/11، والتي نصبت على تقسيم الصحراء الغربية بين المغرب وموريتانيا. وفي يوم 31/10/1975 بدأ المغرب غزو الصحراء الغربية من الشمال وموريتانيا من الجنوب، وكانت بداية الحرب ضد الغزاة الجدد الذي ارتكبوا جرائم بشعة ضد الأطفال والنساء والشيوخ، مما أدى إلى نزوح عشرات الآلاف من مدنهم وقراهم. وبعدما تعرضت إلى قصف بالطائرات، وانسحبت موريتانيا في 1978 واعترفت بالجمهورية العربية الصحراوية واستمرت الحرب مع المغرب 16 سنة، وتم توقيف اتفاق إطلاق النار سنة 1991، وجاءت بعثة الأمم المتحدة لتنظيم استفتاء الصحراء الغربية خلال أشهر معدودة، لكن المغرب عرقل تنظيم الاستفتاء إلى الآن، ويقوم بنهب وسرقة الثروات الصحراوية، ويقوم بانتهاك حقوق الإنسان في المدن الصحراوية المحتلة. وهناك عشرات الضحايا الذين قضوا في السجون السرية، مئات المفقودين، وهذا بشهادة من منظمات حقوق الإنسان كمنظمة هيومن رايتس وورد والعفو الدولي. وجاءت بعثة الأمم المتحدة لتنظيم استفتاء في الصحراء الغربية خلال أشهر معدودة، لكن المغرب ظل يعرقل المشروع الأممي طوال 20 عاما ليقوم يوم 13/11/2020 باختراق وقف إطلاق النار، مما فرض على جبهة البوليساريو العودة للكفاح المسلح. شكرا. Thank you very much.
Western Sahara is located to the north in northwest Africa with an area of 284,000 square kilometers. It has a long coastline on the Atlantic Ocean, and its capital city is the city of El Ayoun. It borders the north with Morocco, to the east with Algeria, to the south with Mauritania, and to the west with the Atlantic Ocean. Its population is around 1 million people. It is a country rich in natural resources. Phosphates was discovered in 1947, and it's the largest phosphate transporter in the world and is also rich in fisheries. Desert beaches are among the most expensive, along with iron ore. Studies have confirmed the best gas and oil on the desert shores. From the times of Third World colonialism, Spain colonized Western Sahara, and the colonization lasted about a century. On June 17, 1970, a great Sahrawi uprising took place against colonialism, and Spain brutally prevented it. On May 10th, in 1973, the Polisario Front was established as a national liberation movement. And on May 20th, 1973, armed struggle broke out. In May 1975, the United Nations sent a fact-finding mission to Western Sahara. In its report after the visit, they confirmed the Sahrawi consensus on independence. Because the Polisario Front is the only political force in Western Sahara and is in the face of the situation, Spain announced its intention to withdraw from Western Sahara when the Madrid Agreement was signed in 1975, which provided for the division of the Sahara between Morocco and Mauritania. But on October 31st, 1975, Morocco appeared in Western Sahara to the north, invaded, and Mauritania invaded to the south, and the beginning of the war against the new invaders who committed atrocious crimes against children, women, and the elderly, which caused the displacement of tens of thousands from their cities and towns after they were exposed to aircraft bombing. Mauritania withdrew from the war in 1978 and recognized the Sahrawi Arab Republic, but the war with Morocco continued for 16 years. In 1991, there was a ceasefire agreement, and the United Nations mission promised to organize a referendum in Western Sahara within a few months, but Morocco has hindered the organization of the referendum so far, while they are looting and stealing the Sahrawi wealth and violating human rights in the occupied desert cities. This is according to the testimony of the biggest international human rights organizations like Hamon and Amnesty International and others. And the United Nations mission should have organized a referendum in Western Sahara in a few months, but Morocco has been obstructing the process for 20 years to break the ceasefire. And in 2020, forcing the Polisario Front to return to armed struggle.
The group Western Sahara Non-Violence Group Nova strongly condemns the violation by Morocco of the ceasefire agreement signed in 1991 between the Polisario Front and the Kingdom of Morocco by attacking Sahrawi civilian who demonstrated the illegal violation of Gergerat. At Nova, we believe and continue to believe in the viability of peaceful solution, and we have always hope and hope that the issue will be resolved peacefully without restoring to violence, and they have warned on more than one occasion of this expected result, which is a return to armed strongly for the frustration and loss of youth, for confidence in the international peace process. We believe that the only fair solution of this problem that grants the continued stability of the region is to allow the Sahrawis to choose their destiny freely and fairly. Therefore, we call on the international community, especially the United Nations, to accelerate the empowerment of the Sahrawi people to exercise their legitimate right to self-determination and independence. We also hold the international community, especially the United Nations and Morocco, responsible for the result of this war. And we also warn of the situation that might lead to the increased tension, insecurity, and stability in the region. In the international community continues to the neglect the Sahrawi question as the Morocco state obstruct the process of self-determination. The NOVA, Western Sahara Non-Violence Group, is a group of the young volunteers which works to spread the culture of non-violence in Western Sahara societies, as well as to promote the culture of dialogue, human rights, and the defense of the wealth of Western Sahara, as well as advocating for the right of the Sahrawi people to self-determination and independence. It also seeks to build social trust awareness campaign among the most important activities carried out by the group organization training on non-violence and dialogue, workshops on important issues, awareness days, organization campaign, and participating in other advocating for the Sahrawi cause and preceding the internationally by organization, digital seminars, were writing the declaration of the solidarity and denunciation and sharing them with partners to spread the Sahrawi cause and make it know the international community. Once again, we thank Mr. Meyer and IFOR on and speaks Copal Cherish of South Sudan for organizing this great international meeting and the secrets of the participation of the Nova Western Sahara in improve and experience and ideas and the world joint relation between the participating parties. Thank you very much.
Let's just say before we say anything. Okay.
Aquí es la parte ocupada de Marruecos y aquí es la parte liberada de los saharauis y aquí solamente vive el ejército del Polisario. Toda la gente refugiada está aquí en Tinduf.
This is the occupied territory of Morocco, and this is the liberated territory where only the Polisario front is living, and the refugee camps are located here in Algeria.
Okay, so I just I just want to say, we are aware that there are so many hundreds of African languages and colonized languages. But even here, even with colonial languages, having English only, without French, without Spanish, without Portuguese, without Arabic, the dominant languages of intercommunication is a problem. So we are thrilled to have had an Arabic presentation, even though most of you didn't understand it. And we're thrilled to have Sienna Man translating it. And we're thrilled to have Mohamed Western Sahara will be free. Western Sahara will be free. Western Sahara will be free. Western Sahara will be free.
Thanks very much.
We now have one more speaker.
They can just point out the
We're going to have the slides sent, information sent. We're not going to focus too much on the slides here. It will take triple the time. We will send the slides. Let's deal with the humans who are in the room with us. It has taken years to get them here. Slides can be sent. And there will be now one more speaker and then a question and answer session and conversation. Then the rest of the speakers and another question and answer session. And then we're going to be together for days. So without further ado, please help me in welcoming from Kurdistan, from the Kurdistan National Committee and the peoples of Rojava, Ahmed Shekho. Help me in welcoming.
We must say Jinjian Alzoughbi, like mean free woman. Is it big our respect? First of all, thank you for all you here. I am very happy to see you. I think it's a historical chance for me because I'm here. Maybe somebody said why? Because in East Africa, in 1999, big Kurdish leader arrested by Kenya, by NATO. So our people maybe has sad memory about East Africa, but when I come, I will change that, and I said we can make a good relation with East Africa, and we can together work, build a free world and democracy country. So I said it's a very honor for me to be here and see East African people there.
Yes.
This is our map. I put this map just to know where is the Kurdish people and Kurdish area. But our goal is not building a state, but our goal is not building state, but building society, building woman, building human. So I just put this map to know where is the Kurdish and Kurdish map. We are four parts. In 1960, French and British divided our land to four parts. One of the biggest in the Turkish, after that in Iran, after that in Iraq, and Syria. There is about 25 million in Turkish, 15 million in Iran, 7 million in Iraq, 4 and a small part in Syria. So after they divided our land and our people, our situation was very hard and very difficult because foreign state don't give us our right and don't leave us to learn our language and life by our culture. So we don't have any school learn or teach Kurdish language for this part. But we have after that we have now in Syria we have self-administration, not autonomy or not federation. It's self-administration because we have different mentality and different view. we don't look solution between state. We look situation. We look for a solution between society, not between state, because we believe if we make freedom society, freedom man and woman, we can do any goal here. So when we speak about the issue of Kurdish, we must now in Syria we have self-administration. My town is here, Afrin, but it's occupied by the Turkish, and there is two cities, Salekani, Gresipi, occupied by Turkish too, and in North Kurdistan, we said, or Baku, it's a very hard situation because the main country fight Kurdish people is Turkish. So they occupied our city here. They occupied the two cities in North Syria, and they also attacked here in North Iraq. Last 3 months or last 2 years, Turkish used chemical weapons to attack Kurdish civilians in North Iraq and North Syria. And before 7 days, about 17 Kurdish fighter, Kurdish civilian, killed by Turkish chemical weapons. We make a lot of demonstration in Europe, in all over the world, to see how Turkish learn chemical weapons about us. Our struggle for part and for diaspora too, by organization is Kanaka. It means Kurdistan National Congress. It's coalition from 51 organization and parties. It's coalition from 51 organization and parties and lots of personnel in Kurdistan. We work to find a political solution, democratic solution for Kurdish issue, and make the relation with all the world society. I think something about Rojava. We said North Syria, because I'm from North Syria. 2018, when ISIS attacked us, we protect the people here and fight the ISIS. So our international coalition, anti-ISIS come and help us. We liberated, our people liberated all of this area from ISIS. After that, build self-demonstration from Arab and Kurdish and all the ethnic and the regional there. Now we on our way to make peace or make a democratic. We thinking how we thought if the woman be freedom, society be freedom, and another way it's not right. When we speak about peace, we believe the woman make peace, a woman make freedom. So in all our organization, in all our struggle, we put the present 52 men, 52 women. So our struggle is be very strong because it's a society struggle. And when we speak about freedom or independent, not speak about building state or building another way. When we think about independent, we speak about how we can independent view, how we can independent work, how we can independent life. It means how I can make our history and now with us, how can live with another ethnic, another religion, another people. We can work together because we believe if the Middle East not democratic, our issue is not be solution. So now in Syria, we are lead. We are lead democratic work, and Turkish same, and Iraq same, and Iran same. You now before about 1 month in Iran, there is some relation. They said Jen Jian Azadi. It means woman free. Jen Jian Azadi, woman life free. Our Kurdish people said that word. That it's we said something same thing in Syria, in Turkish, in Iraq. And our working to make a democratic society and democratic solution for us, or not just for us, for the people we live with them. Yeah. In our mind, in our people, we said we don't have any friend, just our friend is our mountain, because the system of the world divided us. So now we want to make a loss of friend from a loss of society, the world. And we believe our issue is not between us and between Turkish people. It's not between us and between Arab. We believe it's our issue. It's because there is international intervention from another way. So maybe it's enough. I will thank you.
It's enough just for the beginning, not for the whole. Please thank Ahmed Shekho. Free Kurdistan. Free Kurdistan. Free Kurdistan. Free Kurdistan. Free Kurdistan. Now, we are clear. It is not enough. It is not enough until all are free. But for now, because we are moving on the schedule, I'm going to ask you to take a seat and ask our other earlier presenters to come up here from Western Sahara and from Tibet. Tenzin, bring your own chair. And Sienna, bring your own chair as well. And we're going to have just 15 minutes of Q&A. 15 minutes will not be enough. And we will not be done talking to these amazing people at the end of that time. However, what we will do is after the 15 minutes, have the rest of the presenters, and then we'll have more question and answer, and then we'll have days of conversation with one another. So it doesn't end here. This is just what's going to be on the live stream and what's going to be available on the table. The other thing I'll say is quickly this. We fully expect to go right up to lunch, not to end a few minutes before, maybe even a little bit after. And we fully expect that that's going to be okay with all of you. So let me just reposition this so we can see them all and say who will be the first question or comment. Please. Okay, Maggie.
I just wanted to point out the map of Western Sahara.
Nice and loud, please.
Yeah,
Yeah, use the mic, sorry.
the map of Western Sahara. The
One
line
second, use the mic so we can all hear you.
The map on Western Sahara, the line that separates the occupied and the unoccupied territories is actually the Baron. So when you look at the Baron then makes that distinction, which is a wall that was built by Morocco. But then also the fisheries, the extent of the ocean lines that the fisheries that are being taken as a means of the theft of natural resources from the territory. And then also just to ask Tenzin, because I know this, the rite of passage back to Tibet, if you've left, what are the chances of ever returning? Thank you very much.
There was just a comment.
Yeah.
At the moment, majority of the Tibetan population still live in Tibet. And outside Tibet, Tibetan refugees living in Nepal, Bhutan, India, and also Tibetans living in the West, Europe, America, Australia, all put together is 150,000 Tibetans. So only 150,000 Tibetans live outside Tibet, while majority, which is almost about 6 million Tibetans, they still live in Tibet under Chinese occupation. Those of my parents' generation who escaped Tibet along with His Holiness the Dalai Lama in 1959 and 1960, their relationship with half their family, or more than half their family who continue to live in Tibet, the relationship has been severed. Like my mother's half of family remained behind in Tibet. They could not continue to keep that kind of relationship, so completely separate. So we actually do not know whether those families are living or not. We don't know. There was another wave of refugees in the 1980s, and many of my classmates who I studied with, they came from Tibet to India, and since then they never met their parents. They cannot go back. Another wave of refugees was in the 1990s or right up to 2000. Those were the ones who came from Tibet, and some of them have been able to return. But once they return, their security or their data, everything has been validated and guaranteed by their family back in Tibet. But these individuals would have to undergo surveillance for at least 1 or 2 years, and on their return they have to be in jail almost about 6 months. So these are absolutely, not only under surveillance, but all the papers processed. And yes, there are these people who have never been able to return, nor have they been able to maintain any kind of relationship. Now, if your question is about absolute return, this would truly depend on the solution that is going to come out of Tibet. We do not know. Now it has become such an international issue already. The United States has started to raise the issue of Tibet. India is going to perhaps likely to take more interest in this. So it has now become an international issue. How this is going to be resolved, we do not know. But it'll be interesting to see how this is very quickly becoming an international issue already.
Okay, more questions and comments, please. Questions and comments? Table. And you can stand here so we can see you since you're conveniently located.
Yes, thank you for giving me this opportunity to ask a question. One question goes to Tibet, the Tibet people. I heard the Polisario group has been, they have an army or a struggle. There is a revolution or people rebelling against the government. And for Kurds also, I also hear over the radio, they are also struggling. There is armed struggle. I have not heard about the Tibet. Have they got a struggle using arms? That is the question to Tibet. Two, to Polisario group. Yes, we have heard of this struggle for a long time, and it has gone to the United Nations. And up to now, there is no referendum that has been made. Is there a possibility with the civil societies along your side that this process of referendum will take place? To Kurdish, yes, I heard over the radio yesterday that the Finland Prime Minister was coming to Turkey. And that has been a problem because if I heard well, they are saying some of these countries are covering or supporting these Kurdish groups. And the Turkish government, of course, is not interested to allow Finland to be in the EU. And that has been one of the talks. Is there people outside there also working? Because if you don't clap your hand, nobody will hear you. Is this happening? Thank you. My name is Patrick Paul Emzai, South Sudan in Juba.
Bueno, el referéndum es cuando dijo Estados Unidos, la ONU, cuando dijo que va a hacer referéndum dentro de 4 meses o 6, después no lo hizo, de verdad. Entonces estuvo hasta 20 años más para que ha vuelto la guerra tras el Guergarat, cuando Marruecos sacaron unas manifestaciones pacíficos en Guergarat y ha vuelto la guerra. Pero el referéndum está todavía, puede no hacerlo, pero ahora está el Sahara Occidental con Marruecos, que están en guerra. Pero se puede hacer también el referéndum en guerra.
So the referendum was supposed to happen within 4 to 6 months, and it never took place. It's been now more than 20 years. And the war started again after the ceasefire because Morocco attacked some peaceful demonstrations in Guergarat. And so we are currently in war, but the referendum could still happen in the war.
El referéndum todavía la ONU no lo había hecho, pero siempre dicen que lo van a hacer. Pero estamos siguiendo igualmente que antes de 20 años.
The referendum has not taken place. The United Nations continues saying that they're going to do it, but we've been waiting for more than 20 years.
Yes, when everywhere, if there is a colonialism or occupated, if okay, occupated, make somebody or some organization for him. So to say maybe he have some relation with some course, but it's not all. All our people see the Turkish occupation our land. So now in Syria we control our land and we're building like a local government or self-administration. And in Turkey, because the election after 7 months, so all prime power of Turkey to win an election, so they find another place and use a lot of way how got vote from Kurdish people, but it's difficult for Turkish in next election.
Well, the question was whether there was an armed resistance movement in the Tibetan case or not. When China invaded Tibet, much of the Tibetan population, as I was saying earlier, lived in isolation, cut off from the rest of the world. They lived in the Himalayas, had no idea what was happening around the world. When the Chinese invasion happened, they were attacking local villages, monasteries. So people were literally protecting their own village and the monasteries and their religious lamas and the farmers. And that response initially came as individual response from one village to another monastery. They didn't realize the larger political scenario, that the occupation was that of a country, not just your village. So therefore the responses came in the form of individually fighting, taking whatever weapons you have at home, a sword or a chopper or a matchlock guns that people used to use for their hunting, or in protecting your animals from wolves. That kind of responses, which later got more organized as one organization that was put together called the Chushikantuk, the organized armed resistance movement. These were the Tibetan guerrillas who used to hide up in the mountains, come down into the valley, attack the Chinese invading forces, take away, rob them of their guns, then again run away into the mountains, taking advantage of the local knowledge. So Chushikantuk was first formed in 1956, and subsequently they received some support from the CIA. So it will be shocking for all of you to know that some of the Tibetans were taken to Colorado, trained them in guerrilla warfare, dropped them back in Tibet to fight against Chinese. Now, Tibetans used to think that, oh, Americans love us, they're supporting us. But Americans, later we understood, they were only using part of this only to create kind of a disturbance to the communist Chinese. And in 1971, when America, struck deal of friendship with China, Richard Nixon, immediately the anti-support to the Tibetans was stopped. So this armed resistance movement started by Tibetans with some support by the Americans. Went on to 1971, 74 was the last point where the camp, which was based in Western Nepal, was disbanded. Today, there is no armed resistance movement in the Tibetan freedom movement. And it's completely led by His Holiness the Dalai Lama from India, and we hope things would come about with some kind of change. In terms of leadership, the Tibetan leadership inside Tibet for a long time was led by the second highest Buddhist leader called the Panchen Lama, and he died in 1995. And much later, the new reincarnation was formed, was recognized. But that was disappeared by China, and China installed another Buddhist monk and called that Panchen Lama. So it's the second high. So in that way, what China is trying to do is duplicate leadership, and now they are plotting to create their own Dalai Lama once this Dalai Lama passes away. So they are playing with this kind of a thing, but I'm sure our thing is that's not going to work, because ours on one side is about faith, on the other side it's about the leadership, and we all believe in His Holiness the Dalai Lama as the ultimate leader.
We have time for one very quick final comment or question for this round.
Okay, thank you for giving me this opportunity. Sorry for not recognizing the name, because the name is not clear for me. My brother from Kurdistan, Kurdistan. Yeah, I have a question for you, because I heard you saying that you believe in women, that women participation can bring peace in the country. So as South Sudanese, I want to get that experience that you have in your country of women participation in peace building that you believe in. My question is, how did the women in your country help in peace building and bringing peace? And also you say that their participation in peace building is 50-50, your participation. Is that really effective, or it is only on the paper that you say it is 50-50? And the other question is, you say that you believe in your mountain instead of having friends. So, how are you managing your conflict without interference of other people? Thank you.
We believe women can bring the democracy and safe. How we do that? Lots of organization of party or of state bring some woman and put some place, but this woman not a representative of his woman. She is a like man or just put the woman. But in our society, we trading man after woman to know how he can respect the woman and how can work together, not just civil work, all the work, for example, economy work, because we believe the economy work is woman work. So if woman work, in political and economic and army and all of the life, a woman must be work, but it's very important which woman and how can do that. Because we, when the woman grow up in the child, the society learn her, you are woman and you cannot do a lot of things, but we can trading our society and our people from the child and another age, and so woman can work. Of course, there is lots of challenge, but if a woman work, I think it's be successful in time.
Thank you, and let's give thanks to all of these panelists for now. I think as they are moving off and we're bringing on the next set, it's worth saying at this point that in the Occupied People's Forum, that has existed until now only via Zoom, it is noteworthy that the representatives of the Palestinian movement, two of them, the representatives of the Western Sahara movement, and the representatives of Kurdistan Rojava have all been women. For logistical reasons, they couldn't get here to be with us, so we have our dear esteemed guests, but it is true that even within our organizational structures, so it looks like there's all men up here, in the Occupied People's Forum, there's been women leadership, and one of the founding leaders is going to be our last presenter today. Right now, very briefly, we're going to hear an update from Rudolf and Nsang about Ambazonia. For those who have been here this week, you've already heard him speak, and for those of you who will be here for the International Fellowship of Reconciliation meetings and workshops on Saturday, he'll be presenting again. So today, right now, we're just giving him a brief moment. And before he goes on, or while he's going on, you may be getting a gift from Tibet.
I have this Tibetan national flag pinned on your chest. This is the flag. This flag is banned in Tibet. Anyone seeing any symbolism of that can be arrested or jailed or even face much bigger danger. But I'm going to erase that in South Sudan, because it's a free and independent country. So I'm going to distribute one pin for all of us. But I wanted to respond to your initial statement about Kashmir. The other half of Kashmir is under Pakistan.
Yes.
So this is we have to remember. It's not just
yes.
in India, but also in Pakistan.
Good correction. Thank you.
All right. Greetings to everybody. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, great privilege to share again about Cameroon, and Ambazonia especially, which is a burning problem now in the country. Just to go a little faster, and I think, like Professor Meyer already said, the presentation will be available, so you can actually have some more information from there, right? Just briefly, I would like to talk a little bit about a very brief history, very fast, and then I'll go ahead to, say the states, what's happening in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. So first of all, Cameroon was colonized by both the British and the French. That's later after the Germans, and because of that colonization, the country was divided into two: 20% going to the British and 80% goes to the French. And since then, there has been an injection, or there was, let's say, throughout that period, an injection of the French culture through the language and education and so on, and judiciary, and of course an injection of the British culture, education and everything, which today is the major reason for the divide. In essence, Cameroon was being colonized 1884, and then by 1916, the British and the French came in, and then sometime by 1960, the French gave independence to the French section of Cameroon, which is generally called East Cameroon, and the British gave independence 1 year after, in 1961, on the 1st of October. So that independence was given with a condition to the English-speaking section. You take independence by either joining French Cameroon, you join Nigeria, and there was a third choice, which wasn't very popular, to be independent, actually, to be on your own, but that was not popular. History says that it wasn't talked about that much. So we decided to get independence by joining French Cameroon. And that's actually where the problem of the separation started again. We went on as a single state onto a federation in 1966, and from 1966 on to 1972, it seemed to be peaceful with the federation. But with the coming of the unitary state again, that means taking away federation and the unitary state being reinstated in Cameroon, that is actually where the reform crisis now, which we're experiencing now, started. That is like over 30 years ago. And since then, the crisis was more of verbal, it was more of administrative, going on to the UN and so on and so forth, until 2016, when the crisis actually burst out and everybody got to know about it. And in 2016, what happened was there was a peaceful demonstration by lawyers on the 1st of October, which is the Independence Day of Southern Cameroon. And that demonstration had a very negative response from the government. It was actually peaceful. Lawyers wore their attire and went out with the billboards and so on. But the government responded by using tear gas and intimidation and guns and water and so on. And they all left. After about 2 months, a similar demonstration went on with teachers, and that is where everything got bad, because on that very day, 2 people were killed by the government, by government military forces. And since then, they really never gave any listening ear. They were up to about 16 points, which at the very beginning of the crisis was just a demand for reforms, a denial of the Frenchification of the English system of the English judiciary system, the English system of education, and even the English language itself, which we had to deny on that day. So the government never responded even to one of these 16 points that were given. The government did not solve any, and because of that, by 2017, just 1 year before the presidential election, just to know that one of the problems in Cameroon is actually gerontocracy and poor leadership. If at all there was no gerontocracy and poor leadership, probably this crisis would have been up to what it is today. So about 2017, it was alleged that young people were going to Nigeria to do some training on guerrilla warfare and so on. And it was just alleged, but I think about 6 months after, I wasn't Mohamed by then, about 6 months after, in the villages, the response was now coming back from these boys who went to Nigeria and got trained and got guns and came back, and all the military people who were in these villages were now being attacked by these boys. And that led to a lot of consequences per se. 2017, well, just we can see on the pictures. 2017, there is a village, for example, called Kwakwa in the southwest region. This village, in less than 1 month, was completely burnt down. Not partially burnt down, it was completely burnt down. And the few houses that were left standing were actually burnt down from inside and from outside, just standing. And this, so far, so good, was caused by the military. Or was done by the military. Maybe it was caused by the boys, but it was actually burning down was done by the military because they thought that the boys were hiding in the houses, and then if they know that you have picked up arms, they go after your family and burn down everything that belongs to your family, including farms. And all these villages were burned down. Many other villages were burned down. My village was burned down partially. And many of my brothers and sisters and cousins came down to Bamenda, and that caused another crisis at the level of the cities. Because now, each family received at least 7 other people, and that caused a lot of problems. And then the crisis left from the villages and came down into the towns, and onto what we have today. Even the northwest and southwest regions are not safe enough, even for me, to go back to these places. And of course, today, of course, there's really been a lot of issues, but I can assure you that at the moment, what is supposed to be the solution to these crises or to these problems is just peace. What we keep asking for is peace and negotiation. 1 year back, there was the government organized a grand national dialogue, which was a complete failure because the people who were invited to it were not the people who started the crisis. Actually, the leaders of the crisis at the very beginning were all been arrested and jailed. Up till now, they are still being jailed. So the dialogue tends to be a monologue, and sincerely, nothing was actually being got from that. And the crisis continues. Like we keep saying, the struggle continues, and a lot of resistance, but of course, a lot of need for peace. Thank you.
Ambazonia will be free. Free Ambazonia. Free Ambazonia. Free Ambazonia. Free Ambazonia. Thank you, my brother. If I have any words to articulate what solidarity means, they were taught to me first by the women of Mozambique, where I was able to travel and study less than 10 years after that country was free, and by the people of Puerto Rico. And of the people of Puerto Rico, we understand in the U.S. That this is a special responsibility because this is the U.S.'s colony. Amongst those struggling people who have struggled since the moment the U.S. Marines landed and took over the country entirely has been a series of political prisoners. One of them, who spent almost 20 years behind bars, is with us now. He'll explain the rest about who he is, but please give a warm welcome from Puerto Rico, Luis Rosa Perez. Sorry for taking that little extra, but I've known his brother for a long time.
Thank you, Max. I had a PowerPoint, but I'm not going to use it because it's kind of dry and you'll need 2 bottles of water to bring it down. So I'll share that with you through the, Matt will share it with you through the web. Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is the easternmost island of the Antilles, larger Antilles, in the Atlantic. It is a gateway towards the United States. So strategically, it was important for the United States to make it a possession. In 1998, this happened. The United States invaded Puerto Rico. It was a military invasion. It was brutal. They bombed for 30 days the capital of Puerto Rico, and subsequently they began their colonial process of Puerto Rico. Before that, Puerto Rico was a Spanish colony for over 400 years. The people of Puerto Rico resisted immediately, but with lack of arms and lack of people to participate, they were quelled, and soon they became colonial possessions of the United States. Now, what this means, the title of my presentation was called a perfect colony, and a perfect colony and I'll explain why I say a perfect colony, not perfect to the people of Puerto Rico, but perfect for the colonizer. What conditions have led to make this colony effective, profitable, and like all colonies, we share a lot of commonalities: the brutality, the displacement of people, the exploitation of our ecology, the exploitation of all our natural resources, including the most important, our people. So in 1998, Puerto Rico becomes a colony. 1898. It was under military rule for a few years, and then after a governor was imposed by the United States for 40 years, and then later they allowed us to elect our own governor to administer the colony. This is real important because sometimes we see these advances as something significant, and the fact that you use your own to now administer the colony sometimes makes it easier to swallow. This is to engrave and to create that onset of that colonialized mentality, because there's many ways of colonizing the people. You can do it brutally, or you can do it with a soft hand, and or a combination of both. We've had that combination of both. We've had the brutality of the invasion, the brutality of military power over us, the confiscation of our land, where 23% of this land, Puerto Rico is a small island, 100 by 35, and other companies, U.S.-based companies. So that leaves very little for the Puerto Ricans to manage and to use for sustainability. But, and I will bounce around sometimes. Maybe it's a nervousness, or maybe it's that I got so much information floating that I want to share. There has been a systematic process of colonizing Puerto Rico. It started, again, I started with military invasion, military rule, allowing us to elect our own officials, making us U.S. citizens, which some people saw as something good. But the reason they made us U.S. citizens was precisely to fight in U.S. wars, to be recruited for U.S. wars, imposing things like the English language, where we were not allowed to speak Spanish, and like our Tibetan brother mentioned, even a flag was banned. We would go to jail for the flag, for poetry, for speeches. There was one Nobel who should have won the Nobel Prize in Literature for reciting two poems. Went 22 years in jail. And Abicio Campos, one of the nationalist leaders, for giving a speech advocating independence, went to jail. So these forms of repression are meant for two things. One, to place fear in the people. Be careful who you support. We've had political prisoners from the onset up to the present, and those political prisoners, the sentences of those political prisoners are not meant just for the political prisoners. They're meant for each and every one of you who dare to support us. That's why they're exaggerated. In my case, personally, I was sentenced to 108 years without killing anyone. But there's other cases. Lolita Lebron, who served 25 years. Andres Figueroa Cordero, 25 years. Oscar Lopez, 36 years in prison. So we've had our history of prisoners, and we've had a history of struggle. Currently, in Puerto Rico, what's happening in Puerto Rico as part of this making the perfect colony, we are the third largest consumer of U.S. products in Latin America, and the fifth in the world. This little island that I said was 100 by 35 is the fifth largest consumer of United States products in the world, and the third in Latin America. We import 93% of what we consume. Now, Puerto Rico is much like Africa. You can throw a seed anywhere and something's going to grow. We grow everything. We used to have the best coffee in the world. We used to have the best tobacco in the world. We grow plantains, everything. But it is not enough to for local consumption, so they import because there's no incentives to grow, and most of the land has been taken over. We've had a share of atrocities in the ecology, like strip mining, like where the center of the island was going to be strip mined for 40% of the copper the United States needed for their military operations was found, and when they had trouble in Africa trying to get that, they went to Puerto Rico to try to mine those mines. Now, obviously, we protested, we marched, and we had armed conflict. Now, I've shared with a few people in this conference that I've had my reservations sometimes. That sometimes I feel like I shouldn't be here, because I am not totally convinced that nonviolence is. Well, what I meant to say is that I'm not totally convinced that wars are not inevitable. That some places the brutality of the colonizer is so hard that it's hard to be peaceful with them. So I've come here to understand how we can do it. Now, in understanding this, I must also turn back the pages and look at what happened in the island of Vieques, Puerto Rico. Vieques is a part of Puerto Rico, it's a small island that was used for 62 years to practice bombings. The United States used to rent it to other countries. Matter of fact, not too long ago, you could have gone on the internet and there was an advertisement saying, "Come to Vieques and experiment your latest hardware, military hardware." And uranium was thrown in there, uranium bombs were thrown in there, all kind of weaponry. Right now, Vieques is probably the most contaminated island in the world. It's got over 10 cancer-causing pathogens. There's people living in Vieques. There's always been people living in Vieques. Every family in Vieques suffers from cancer. Every family. But in the year 1999, after a series of events, one that they dropped a bomb and killed a civilian, after a series of events, people marched peacefully. It was led by a coalition of churches, and there was a peaceful march, and we were able peacefully to get out the most powerful military in the world to stop the bombing. So there is some success in nonviolence, and that's encouraging. That's encouraging to me and possibly to people around the world. We've done the same with the excarceration of political prisoners. We marched peacefully, and we got 2 groups of political prisoners out in 1979 and then in 1999. We've had the peaceful marches recently. We overturned the government in Puerto Rico peacefully without firing a shot. When millions of people shot out to the streets because of a chat that this government had that was homophobic, that was making ridiculing women of certain weight, and so the people shot out to the street and forced him to resign 1 year into his governorship. So there is positive change being created by nonviolent and peaceful movements. Now, at the present, Puerto Rico remains fragmented in its movement. We don't have a movement that's consolidated. We don't have a movement that has been able to unite forces to combat this. We have a governor that's been elected with only 32% of the votes. We have an imposition by the U.S. Congress to control all our budget. There's a committee called the Oversight Committee that President Obama placed in Puerto Rico. This committee tells the governor and tells the country where money is spent. The purpose of this committee is basically to collect the debt. It's a debt collector. We have $72 billion in debt, and this committee was sent to Puerto Rico to collect this debt. So it monitors our budget. It tells us this much goes to the police, this much goes to universities, this much goes to health, and as a result, everything in Puerto Rico has collapsed. We have no health system. We have over 800 doctors that have left the island in the last few years, in the last 3 years. We have over close to 100,000 Puerto Ricans that have migrated. We have twice as many Puerto Ricans now in the United States. Those are refugee camps in the United States than in Puerto Rico. We have 5 million in the United States and only 3.2. So this is the making of a perfect colony. When you're able to steal its resources, when you're able to displace the people, when you're able to not really have any significant challenges against the government, when you're able to strip it and rape it of all its essence, basically, when you're able to force them to adopt your culture and rid themselves of theirs, and when you're able to make the population not grow. We had less than 1% population growth for the last 10 years. Less than 1%. If we're not giving birth, if people are dying quicker than people are being born, we're going to lose our nation. And at the moment, we're being displaced so fast and so quickly that we're going to be left. Puerto Rico is going to be left without Puerto Ricans. And so this is the making of a perfect colony. Now what do? But we resist. We have to resist. It's our survival. How we resist? We have to be very selective because we don't want to see bloodshed and we don't want to see civil war. More than half the population of Puerto Rico supports the U.S. government. The independence movement is actually very small. So how we manage as nonviolent groups and peaceful groups, how we manage to mix within this and quell this anger and channel it towards a better productive way, that's a challenge to us. But that's a challenge to each and every one of you, because I think if we are to be effective, then we must be in solidarity with Tibet. And we must be not only in solidarity, but it's got to be an active solidarity. We must be there in the process of reconciliation in Colombia and elsewhere, and in Southern Sudan. We must be with our brothers in Western Sahara. We must definitely be able to condemn the genocide in Israel, because we can't stay neutral. If we stay neutral, then our work here is in vain. Being nonviolent does not mean being neutral. Being nonviolent does not mean being passive. We must be active. We must be resistors, just as much as the guerrilla fighter and the thing. We must be. Well, we chose not to use a weapon, right? Okay, but we must be as strong in denouncing as any one of them. So that is our challenge. How do we get involved? We must seek alternatives before, sometimes even before the enemy can see them. If we see an electoral process that needs help and needs a push to change something, then we must get involved. If we see a treaty that needs definition, we must be involved in this. And that's why I think I am pleased to be here. I said in the beginning that I thought I shouldn't be here. I am pleased to be here. And I am an example of the power of solidarity, or else I would still be in a 9x5 cell. I am an example, and my people are examples of resiliency and that power. So do not underestimate what you can do in your power. We can change things and maybe make this world a better place. Thank you.
Que viva Puerto Rico Libre! Free Puerto Rico! Free Puerto Rico! Free Puerto Rico! Free Puerto Rico! We're going to have a little switch. You don't know this because you don't have written down how tight the times are and how we're managing them. But we always believe in the first shall be last. And the fact of the matter is, one of the founders of the Occupied Peoples Forum, one of the core people, Rosa from West Papua, who some of you have met, was due to be last. to close it up and create the circle as Tenzin began it and was also one of the early people. On the bad side, we're not able to give her the space to do that. We're going to have her speak next. On the good side, the reason is because our Palestinian activist is not being detained at the border the way he was in Jordan last night. He's not being messed up at the airport the way some of you have in Juba. He's here, but he has to go to the bathroom and wash up a little bit. He'll be here in 10 minutes. Right now, from West Papua, Rosa, Moiwend.
Okay, while Tsundue is helping me on the presentation, I don't have a slide presentation, it's just pictures. So I hope with the pictures it will help us and help you all to visualize what I'm talking about. My name is Rosa Moiwend. I'm an indigenous West Papuan. And I'm not representing political organization, so my position is not as a political leader, but my work is to support the movement, to support the political movement, and also human rights works. So my role in the movement is very much on the facilitating the process to bring people sit down together, to work together, to build strategy together, and also to kind of being a person who do everything to support leaders. So that's very much my role. Maybe because in West Papua, women is not on the leadership, like in a political structure. They don't want to see women tell men about how to do this and that. And I think that's one of the challenges in our movement that we need to change, and many of us in West Papua, especially women, are trying to work on this. So I hope that now with the live streaming, some of my colleagues, women activists in West Papua also can watch this, or also the leaders, the political leaders, so they see that women can do more than what they think. So my title is Introducing Civil Resistance of West Papua Struggle for Self-Determination. Why I use the word civil resistance? Because I also have the same question with my comrade from Puerto Rico about the word of non-violence. Because what would you do if you see your mother being raped in front of you by an Indonesian military? Or your brother being killed? What would you do? Are you gonna watch and do nothing? Are you gonna go and attack that person? That's the option and choice of what your position is, and that's exactly what many of the younger activists in West Papua right now questioning that. The idea of non-violence, which I think I still believe in that, but I want to explore more, not only on what is the action of non-violence means for many of the struggle, especially when it comes to the brutality of the military and police using all this heavy militarized equipment, tear gas, beating you, shot you. What would you do? So that's a big question that I hope during this conversation until the end of the conference we can try to dig in more about this, what it means to us. Yeah. So many, when I first time arrived in here in South, finally I can be here. And in West Papua, when we arrive in one new place or land, because we always call the land as a mama ground. So when I first time stepped into the airport in South Sudan, in Juba, I just said, Mama Africa, here I come. So I just want to pay respect to the land, to the motherland, to Mama ground, because of that connection. And because of the way I look, people always think that I'm from Africa. Yeah. Even I believe some of you might think I'm somewhere from, maybe from many places in Africa. And my first impression, some people in Addis Ababa airport said, which part of Ethiopia you come from? And I said, no, I'm not from Ethiopia, but it's okay, you can see me as an Ethiopian. It's the same as when I went to the US and said, hey sister, which part of Caribbean you come from? So I feel that kind of connection, that physical appears, it's really bring me connection to so many people, especially with your blackness. The reason why I said it's important, identity is important, because in West Papua, because of our blackness, because of our physical appearance, because of our hairstyle, skin color, we receive a lot of discrimination and repression from the Indonesian authority, Indonesian military, Indonesian people, who always think that we are different from them. Of course, physically we are different, but they treat us as an animal, because every day we face what they call as monkey. That's why when yesterday we did the monkey exercise, I don't want to do this because it's really traumatized me. I don't want them to see me as a monkey. Yeah? And we have very, very best football team in Indonesia that come from West Papua, and we have some of the Cameroon players also in our club, and they're the best. Yes. And we have very, very strong, best football, soccer, coach, which is a black Brazilian. So you see the power of this is people feel like they come together on the field and they're fighting not just for the soccer game, but for something else, which is the identity, the pride of being black in that country. So, because of that, we're facing this. In 2019, there was a big marching and protest against Indonesian authority and Indonesian people in West Papua. Like, it mobilized thousands of people on the street spontaneously, because a week before, the Indonesian militia and some people attacked West Papuan students in Java, in Indonesia, and call them monkey, and they throw bananas, they throw stone, and they use military force to attack the boarding house of the West Papuan student. And since then, that's the moment where West Papuan awake from the long sleep that they didn't realize that we were being discriminated for so long because of our skin color. So West Papua, as you can see, many of the people call we are in Asia, but we are located in here. So this island called New Guinea. You know why it's called New Guinea? Because when the first time European explorers explored this big island in the Pacific Ocean, they saw people like people in Guinea, Africa. That's why they put New Guinea. Because they found the same people in this land, which is Melanesian people, people like me. We call ourselves Melanesian because of the melanin of our skin. Yeah? So this is what they call New Guinea. And many of the islands here, it's also people of Melanesia, people of same color and same skin like me. But they exist in this Pacific Ocean. So there is always a big question, how could God put people like you in this other side of the world? When you meet them, you will see that they just look like you. So that's a big question, and I don't know why, but that, I think that God must have something, a reason for that. And also like people in Australia. So we are very close to Australia. That's why in this region, it should be go beyond. We call ourselves as an Oceania people. So in Oceania, because of the Pacific Ocean, we have Melanesian, which is people with the dark skin like us, and then Polynesian, which is a bit lighter, and also micronation, which is come from the small islands countries. And this is the reason why we become a part of Indonesia, is because of the European divided us into two sides. The Papua New Guinea side, they call it Papua New Guinea. It was divided by British and German, so it was occupied by British and German. And our side was occupied by the Netherlands. So for the older generation, they call us Netherland New Guinea. That's the word for West Papua during that time. So the word Papua is not something common until 20. Then we can call ourselves as a Papua or West Papua. So you can see East Timor. East Timor was also occupied by Indonesia, and now they are independent country. So this is where West Papua is. So we are one of the provinces in Indonesia. So that's why I have my Indonesian passport. And every time I pass through the immigration on the international travel, then they always say, "Why are you sure you are Indonesian?" I said, "Well, yeah, by born, by race, I was born in Indonesian territory. But if you ask me why there is a black people in that country, this is the history." So I will tell them 5 minutes lecture for history. So this is the West Papua. Okay, I will continue, otherwise I will speak forever. So this is our flag, the national flag. Some people thought it's a Cuban flag, but I think the spirit is there, similar, because this flag and our national coat of arms actually established in 1962, when the end of the I think it was during the end of the Second World War, where the UN decided to end all the colonial in colonial country. And West Papua was part of the Dutch colony, so the government of the Netherlands also, I have 5 minutes left, have to decolonize us. So the Netherlands government formed the political parties and what they called the first West Papuan People Congress, that they decided to have political structure, and they have national flag. We call it Morning Star. It comes from the cultural belief that the morning star always rise every morning to bring about the life. So this is the star of the morning star. And then the blue represented the 7 customary territory in West Papua. And the red and white color is about the faith, and also about the braveness of the people, but also the blood of the people. And this is our national coat of arms. The bird of Mambruk is the only bird in the world that has endemic West Papua. So the way Indonesia occupied is by sending their troops, Indonesian military troops, to occupy West Papua in 1969 under the operation called Trikora Operation. So they sent the troops, and they also signed an agreement called New York Agreement between Indonesia and Netherlands without involving West Papua to decide about the political status of West Papua. So then in 1969, the UN organized what they call the Act of Free Choice or referendum, which is not really free choice, because under the Indonesian military oppression, they only handpicked 1,025 representatives to choose to become part of Indonesia. And since then, there is a growing number of protests of people in front of the venue, and then they started to find what we call the West Papua National Liberation Army. So we start our first resistance with the armed struggle. And they still exist until today. They normally attack Indonesian military when they started to kill people in the village. So there is an agreement between political organization, the armed groups, that they will take over some position when the Indonesian military treat our people with brutality, that's the role of the armed group to face the military of Indonesia. But when it comes to the street in the city, in everywhere in West Papua, that's the role of the civil resistance movement. So during that transition, we can't really use resistance, so we use the cultural resistance. And some of our musicians, they formed a band called Black Brothers, and they started to campaign about West Papua movement for freedom through music. And they are very famous in Indonesia during that 1960s, 1970s until 1990s. And even some of them now living in exile in the Netherlands, and some of them in the Pacific. So they started the campaign. And also the traditional string band music led by some traditional musician called Mambesak. So we use a lot of culture during that repression time just to raise the issue about West Papua. And this is my late father. He's an artist. He's the one who really influenced me and taught me about the identity, and he's also part of this cultural movement during that time. And the reason why Indonesia wants to occupy is because of our resources. The mining, mineral, gold, copper, and other, if you find gold, it means the other minerals also will be followed, right? Yeah. So this is they built this mining city in the heart of the mountain of indigenous Nemangkawi, indigenous Amume people. And the mountain is the only top mountain in the tropical region where it has ice on the top. So we have Himalaya is the highest mountain, and in the tropical line, equator line, this is the only mountain with the ice on the top. And now the ice is getting smaller because of the mining activity. And military operation, what they do? They teach in school. They teach in school. They use this heavy military equipment, and they will put, and police also being militarized. So this is the picture of the protesters when we marching against the act of racism by the Indonesian people, and then the police brought them and asked them to lay down on the ground, and some of them were killed. And this is how women play the everyday resistance. They make bags with our flags on that. They put that on their, as a fit top. And, this is like everyday pictures on the market. You can see women just weaving the bag and they sell it. And police came and, hey, this is bag. This is the flag. You are not allowed to sell it or carry it. And they said, officer, are you blind? This is bag. This is not a flag. So so many of the mamas, they will say that this is bag. How could you ban the bag? People want to wear the bag, right? So they're very smart. So the flag is also banned. People will be arrested for 5 to 15 years because of raising the flag. So this is how now younger generation bring the struggle on the street in the city. So they're not in the jungle anymore. They are students, they are people like me who are marching on the street. We build solidarity with the Indonesian activists, so we founded the Indonesian People Front for West Papua, who also taking risk on the front line to talk about free West Papua. We also build solidarity in the regional Pacific, Australia, Oceania, to gain the support from the leaders. And we also actually build that connection also through African solidarity, especially through the forum called the Organization of African, Caribbean, and the Pacific countries, which is the president was from, I think he's from Tanzania. So they made a really good statement in one of their meeting last year and this year in Brussels. when they talk about human rights situation and they try to bring the issue to negotiation with the Indonesia. But I hope that it will still continue. I'll come to the end. And in West Papua, we have a drum, a traditional drum, we call it tifa. So people always feel like this. You know, we are like the tifa drum. The harder you hit us, the louder we become. So the more you hit us, people will keep shouting and louding. So I have 1 minute. With that 1 minute, I want to make a call for solidarity, especially to my African brothers and sisters. You know, I mentioned about AOCP, AICAP, the African Caribbean countries. So please call your leaders to keep talking about West Papua on the negotiation table. And I also want to, if I may have some seconds, invite all of you to stand up and having a little exercise of solidarity call. So I want to play a drum beat. Yeah, I know you know how to play a drum beat, but because this is the calling for West Papua solidarity, so as a West Papuan, I will beat my drum. And please respond to that beat with anything that you can do. Either you want to play the beat or you want to take anything or making sounds and noise. But remember, we have to make one harmonious sounds, like harmony, right? Not only like, you know, but because we try to work in solidarity. So, okay, I will start the calling. Feel free to anytime just get in with your own sound.
Free West Papua! Free West Papua! Free West Papua! Free West Papua! It's hard to speak. I'll just say it's with enormous pleasure to introduce the last of our speakers who literally just arrived here. We barely let him go to the bathroom. So I don't know if you've been reoccupied by us, but we are honored to have a longtime leader of International Fellowship of Reconciliation in the Middle East, a Palestinian resistor. Please help me in welcoming the last presentation from Palestine from the WIAM organization, Zougbhi Alzoughbi.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be with you all. And to be here in South Sudan, where struggled for a long time to be free. Hopefully, all of the people here representing different oppressors will be free soon, including the Palestinians who have been suffering under the occupation since 1948. It's great to be here because we are together as a family, transnationally. We are a global family, regardless of our faith, nationality, religion. We are marching to the drum of freedom, to the drum of justice. Sometimes it worked, and sometimes it takes longer time. I'm glad to be here because I feel already the solidarity and the empathy and the compassion. And I'm glad to be here because already I feel uplifted spiritually by the sum of your faith, the sum of your spirituality, the sum of your gatherings here. And as Martin Luther King, when he talks about oppressed people, you know, any injustice anywhere is a fringe on justice everywhere. And this is our situation. I don't know if I will go which line. I am known for always try to organize chaos in my life. I like to mention about the characteristics first, the characteristics of the empire that we are living in, the unjust empire. And I was in the airplane jotting some ideas, and I like to share it with you. Because again, I don't want only to think of my people, I would like to think of all of us, regardless to where we come from. You know, one characteristic of this empire that multinational corporations is in control. And this has been in coalition with arms deal people, states, with the power to be, in addition to those who are trying to manipulate and invest in oil and gas in other countries in the south, mainly. And of course, the other characteristics, as much this coalition will enhance its richness, it will create more poverty in the countries, other countries, in the south and the east. Third point, that oppressors always find ways to consolidate power, to be together, to continue in their way of slavery, in their way of oppression, in their way of colonialism, in their way of injustice. But the oppressed are not finding that kind of consolidation of power. Maybe because they lack resources, and maybe other reasons we will hopefully discuss together more and more. You know, and the power to be, as you see it nowadays, and it has been, the empire has double standard. Ukraine has been occupied or attacked by Russia just a few months, maybe some year ago. Look about UN resolutions. Look about the jumping of many Western countries to support it with arms, with money, with food, with everything, while people who are oppressed in different parts of the world don't receive this kind of support. And sometimes as a Palestinian, I say, I should call the Russians to occupy us. In order that the Western world and many in the Arab world and the Gulf will jump to help us, but we don't want weapons. We will do it in non-violence, since we are organization of non-violence. And of course, the empire always have the policy, whether it's on the states level or if we consider them one, to have selective history. You know, if we go to the States, they talk about the Holocaust, and nothing wrong about the Holocaust. It is the most terrible one, and it shouldn't be. But what about the First Nation people in Canada, Native Americans? What about the Afro-American, who many of them killed on the passage from Africa? What about the Armenian genocide, the Syrian? What about the Rwandans? What about all of that? need to remind the world that we shouldn't be selective. Even one person is killed, is counted. It's two, because whether we are faith-based, that everyone is created in the image of God, or as a human being. Every human being is valuable. As John Donne says, no man, no woman is an island. If God is washed away by the sea, Europe is the less. And everyone is very important, regardless to his or her ethnicity, religion, gender, and so on. You know, these are just try to think of the what they call it, empire. And the empire is very easy try to mobilize resources, recruit mercenaries to fight on their behalf, to use the media to demonize others who are different, and they are in control worldwide of the oppressed, not based on values or morals, but based on interests and gains. And if we talk about the Palestinian issue, we see how Israel, and by the way, when I talk about Israel, I'm talking about the system. I'm not against Jews. Jews as a human beings. But I'm against the system, which is the occupation. And Israel has taken all the ways to suppress people, all the ways to have methods of control used in other places. One is, the apartheid system in South Africa. Yes. They use it. The second one, Berlin Wall. Berlin Wall was built between 61 to 89, but the problem is the Israeli leadership didn't learn from it. That 28 years was the Germans destroyed it, also with the support of collective responsibility. Civil rights movement, they didn't learn from it, but they used different ways. Reservations in US and Canada. So it seems the Israeli occupation has used all of these ways to suppress our people. Are we going to be different? I think we should admit that there is south in the north and north in the south. There is east in the west and there is west in the east. That doesn't mean we are pointing the finger at some states, not the others. There are people who are part of this system who create unhealthy situation. And they are very good in propaganda. Talking about the Palestinian situation where we live under occupation from 48, every day is getting worse. There was 100,000 Israeli settlers in the West Bank. Now there are more than 800,000 to a million. And the issue is Israel would like to have more geography and less Palestinian demography. Despite the fact that the number of Palestinians and Jews in the holy historic land is equal. Yes. We have almost 8 million on both sides. Yes. There is a demographic war. Yes. But of course the matrix of control is different. Yes. The domination is different. Will this change? And nowadays, as you know, there was election in Israel, and it has been the most right-wing elections. Netanyahu is enough to be right-wing, but he has more people in his coalition on the right wing. What does it mean? Where are we going from there? Community building or chaos? Yes. Where will be ethnic cleansing, will be more transfer. Some people will be in the Israeli government who believe that the best way is to transfer the people. And of course, it is the best time for them because the world is busy with Ukraine.
Yes.
And of course, we like the Ukrainian people to be free. We like all the people to be free, but not to choose people, only to be in this way, to free, but the others are not human beings. So, still we have lots of issues to deal with.
Yeah.
And I just named 5 or 6 ton issues, and then I conclude.
Yeah, yeah.
Because Jerusalem, Jerusalem will again explode the conflict. And this time, it will not only political national conflict, it will be a religious conflict.
Yes.
Either you win a seat in heaven or conquer the other enemy. For me, I don't want to win a seat in heaven, and I don't want to conquer the enemy. I want to live and to celebrate life with those who are different from us. The new person who might be leading the situation in Israel-Palestine, in Jerusalem, to think of building the temple. And if they want to build a temple, destroy the Dome of the Rock, crack down on Christian and Muslim holy places, it will ignite a new religious war. And we don't want it. And please, let us work on it. How to prevent religious wars? Religious wars is worse and sometimes more than national wars or any kind of wars over interest, over resources, over things. So Jerusalem should be shared as spiritual capital for Muslims, Christians, and Jews, and should be shared as 2 capitals for Palestine and Israel. And other issues, I will just name them: the issue of settlement, I mentioned, the issue of land, the issue of water. You remember I came here and asked for water because 90% of our water is taken by the Israelis. And the moment when we try to find water for drinking or using, our neighbors, Israel has 24 hours running water. We might only have it once every 4 weeks, 3 weeks, collected in tanks. And of course, you know what will happen? It will create internal uprising, kidney stones, because accumulate and it's not healthy. The other issue, the issue of prisoners, the other issues, the issue of freedom of movement, the issue of building, and so on. I conclude here by saying we shouldn't allow the occupation to continue, and we should put our hands together to work together to end this occupation and move forward and create a better relationship and invest in quality of relationship. Thank you. And thank you.
Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Okay, we're going to stay here. We're going to ask the other presenters from the second half, Rosa and Rudolf, to please come up here. And we're going to tell Moses and Blythe and our dear comrades in ONAD what they're in, which is we'll have the lunch in 1 and not at 12:30 today. I should just say, those of you that worry about food and things like that, we did, you might see on the program, hopefully you got the new program. We did alter the times. That's it, you got 4. You got 4. Yeah. Yeah. Please, no. You got 4. Okay. And so we're coming back at 3 p.m. Not at 2:30. So we're going to have the full 2 hours from 1 to 3 for lunch. And then at 3 p.m. we have a brief presentation from Light, from ONET, and then we'll go on with the rest of the program. Let's open it up. First question or comment. Open it up. First question or comment. And then after this, I'll say we want all of the occupied people, all of the people who have been the staunchest 21st century resistors, because occupation is not the feature of what they've been, it's resistance. So please, Dr. Irene, start us off.
Thank you very much, Matt. And I take this moment to thank the presenters, Louis, Rudolf, my brother about Palestine, which I didn't get to know his
Zougbhi.
name, and Rosa. So it's like a comment, maybe inside it has a question, especially I'm addressing to Rudolf, maybe, and maybe, to Louis first. During African independence, our founding father, Mwalimu Nyerere in Tanzania, he said these words. He said these words and he walked the talk. He said, Tanzania cannot be free if other African countries are still under occupation and are still under colonization. And he did a lot to support African countries which were under occupation. Even if his country was poor, but he really supported these countries. For example, he brought freedom fighters from South Africa to stay and live in Tanzania, and he provided support. Mandela also was once in Tanzania hiding at the University of Dar es Salaam. And he did, we know that, and with his Pan-African spirit and what. So from our presentation, especially about Puerto Rico. So my question is, what support is Puerto Rican people and their political leaders get support from the people who, for example, the countries or the people who believe in them? Because from the presentation, you also talk about the challenge, and also you have some people in the country which is supporting the occupiers, the United States. So I wanted you to hear if there are some supports which is getting there, and for some of us who are here to get to how can we, support. Yes, we are at this conference, but also what can be done more. Yes, we need to get out word, but we need to get that. And another question about the politicians, your leaders. Are these leaders really supporting the cause, or are they like shaking hands with the enemy and let's bygone be bygone? So that is my question, which maybe it can cut across all. Thank you very much.
Well, yes, I think solidarity has been twofold, right, for us. We've been in solidarity with most of the causes around the world, and we have received that embrace of solidarity as well. And when I spoke about being a testament of that solidarity, I meant just that. There was our incarceration came about because people around the world united in one voice, and sort of embarrassed the United States government to free us. It wasn't because President Clinton was a good person or Obama, or they wanted to free us. It was because of the pressure that was put on the embarrassment of having political prisoners when they hailed themselves around the world as the police of the world, the human rights enforcer of the world, and yet they have committed human rights and atrocities throughout their history. So yes, we have received solidarity. We're very grateful. We continue to participate in forums like this in Sao Paulo and throughout Latin America. I'm pretty sure that when the president of Colombia, the new president, and the president of Brazil were inaugurated back into power, that there was Puerto Ricans there cheering with the flag. We have been there. We have been in South Africa when Mandela came out, and we will continue to be there with our Palestinian brothers and sisters. We feel their pain, and I know they feel ours. So yes, solidarity is very much felt. As far as the politicians sometimes will be politicians. They would do whatever's convenient for them at the time. But we have some good leaders that we confide in. There's leaders from the independence movement right now that is finally making headways into creating alliances with other organizations. Before that was unheard of. And once we see people in action doing that, because that's what counts, right? The action, not the beautiful speeches. Once we see people acting in unison with others, I think we're on the right track. And so I'm very optimistic of our struggle. I think as people who struggle, we can't afford to be pessimistic. We have to see victory, envision victory, and move towards it. So yes, I am encouraged.
Anyone want to comment on that? No? Okay. So who's next? Oh, we have many next people. Yes, let's start with some folks who haven't. Put your hands up again, high. Okay, so I don't know. It may just be my vision, but I see Stella's hand the highest. But I also
She raised the hand first.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to the corner anyway, but now you're just pounding it down. No one but Stella can go next.
Sister.
And all indeed. You're welcome. By the way, she will also be the grand finale this evening, so get ready.
Thank you very much, Matt. So my question is a follow-up from, I think, 3 of the presentations, which raised the issue of violent struggle amidst non-violent people. And I think that it's a huge elephant in the room. I don't know what else has been said previously, but I think for me, that coming from a dictatorship that is military, and we in the civil resistance movement have for a long time insisted on non-violence, yeah? But the dictatorship is more militant, more brutal, and they have guns. And so I think the question that came from the Rosa's conceptualization and distinction between civil resistance versus non-violence. And I think in Puerto Rico, you said, I'm not convinced that non-violence is necessarily the only way to go. What is the role of arms and armed struggle? And I think the question also pertaining to long dictatorships like Uganda is where the younger resistors, the younger organizers, have seen that those of us in the older opposition have been at it for so long. And the victory, the liberation is not coming. The revolution has been elsewhere. In South Africa, there was armed struggle together with civil resistance. In other places, there's been just civil non-violence. So I think for me, my question is, what is the role of violent struggle, armed struggle in all our work, or are we ruling it out? And I think it came from your panel, so I will ask your panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Stella. I think after this question, we'll take 2 or 3 questions together, because I think it's easy. And I think I will say 1/2 a minute of personal privilege. This has been a discussion that, though Zougbhi has not been part of, that Rosa, Luis, myself, several of us, for the years we've begun. Because we're looking at what a thing called revolutionary nonviolence, what a thing called insurrection can be. The idea being, and we'll hear this afternoon from my brother Jihad Abdul Mumit, the idea that we're not going to fight yesterday's battles anymore. We're not going to say Malcolm versus Martin anymore. And we're not going to talk about tactics in ways that are like they are religions. We're going to look at struggle and freedom by any means necessary.
Thank you for this question and response. I think this is based experience as one of the educators for nonviolence resistance teaching in many of the workshops. I always receive questions about, should we be nonviolent if our mothers is killed in front of us? And that's sometimes it's a difficult question to respond. So in many of our sessions, discussions with the activists on the ground,
we talk about how to stop the violence because Indonesia as a state is very militaristic and all the systems are militarized. And we talk about what is the good strategy and tactic to deal with that. And sometimes it comes from the small things that we work on. So in our movement history, we have armed struggle is the first movement organization set up in order to respond to the injustice in the beginning, where UN and other countries decided our future. But as I mentioned, we also had the West Papuan people gathering or people assembly in 2000, where the movement decided to use, instead of use armed struggle, they try to combine the civil resistance, or they call it non-violence during that time. But in that situation in West Papua, when the Indonesian military occupied, especially in the highland region that it's very isolated and we can't reach that area, the only defense situation is the armed struggle will take over the position to face the Indonesian military. That's the only way, because people, many of the people will hiding, and we now have more than 60,000 internal displaced people, especially from the highlands region where the conflict is ongoing. And the only way to access there is no way to access there except the armed resistance group who control some places, especially like public place that are occupied by military. So they will attack the place where Indonesian military base there. So many of our people have to flew out from their territory. And of course, the impact of the violence strategy is very huge for our people. Like people can't live peacefully. They have to leave the country. And the result of that is the Indonesian authority will come with the planning for development and economic exploration or exploitation, because they need natural resources in the conflict area. So we can see they create a conflict in order to displace people, and then they can control the land. So that's the pattern. So that's why I'm not support armed struggle. I still believe in the people's power using civil resistance strategy and tactic. But in reality, many younger activists started to think about either we should use only one strategy or we can use both. And that becomes a discussion among many of our activists, whether we should use both. Even some leaders, they only think about diplomacy as a strategy and don't think about civil resistance, people power as a strategy. So this is a kind of conversation among people in the movement.
The Palestinian resistance has joined the both ways, armed struggle and the non-violent struggle, since its inception. I believe the UN also gave any oppressed people to use all kinds of struggle to liberate themselves.
That's right.
But since we are part of this effort, and also not to give a justification for the oppressed to use more excessive power to justify its means and to justify its policy, I think the best way is to struggle. I use the word unarmed struggle, because we don't want others to reduce our non-violent struggle to passive resistance. Because people in the oppressed circles is that they want to perpetuate the status quo and to keep the power to be. And in order not to be naive, when we talk about non-violence, we talk about diplomatic struggle, different types of 6 or 7 heads besides the 300 plus ways to resolve struggle. I think on the Palestinian side, we need 3 dimensions of this struggle. The Palestinians to continue their struggle non-violently, to get rid of the occupation. The pro-peace camp in Israel, despite it's small, it's a ray of hope. the pro-justice, and probably it is disappearing, but still it is a ray of hope, to have a preventive approach of non-violence, to help their government to get rid of being the occupier. And the third, people like you, as a third party, and you and all of these, to empower the weak, but to bring the strong to their senses and not to their needs, because we believe in restorative justice. And of course, there are many ways for the third party to empower the weak, because to be frank with you, alone as Palestinians, we cannot do it. The matrix of control, the coalition that Israel has done, the double standard of the power to be, needs a different approach of, some people say, why not to go for BDS? Others say, forget about BDS, have morally investment in the Palestinian circles. And this is needed also. Third, people say, you need to really continue to wage diplomatic struggle through applying for UN agencies to be part of it and let Israel be accountable. So there are many ways that help us to move forward. Yes, at this moment, it's the worst of times, but through you, I feel it will be the best of times.
Well, I mean, I want to talk, but I think it's the same solution.
You know, I'm struggling in Puerto Rico. Right now, there's no armed group in Puerto Rico. But when there were, part of the main strategies, or part of why the tactic was used, was to inflict the same pain on the enemy that was being inflicted on you. And maybe by feeling this, they can lessen their pain. If someone was assassinated or killed, then there was retaliation. And our organization, we sought never to harm, never to target any human being. Our type of campaign was political propaganda. It was a military propaganda. We would attack installations. We would give warnings so they'd be evacuated. And we weren't into harming anyone. That's what we didn't want to do. It was effective because it stopped some of the repression. But it was also, it set a framework, a mind framework sometimes that allows people to believe that that's the only way to do it. And it wasn't until Vieques, it wasn't until the campaign to free the political prisoners that we saw that if we do things, if we take the time to organize it, because civil disobedience or nonviolent actions will not get you the results unless you have numbers, or unless you're strategically do an activity, a nonviolent activity that can gain world attention and embarrass sometimes the enemy. But there's you know, and there's a quote, and I think Tenzin mentioned that freedom is in the process. But we must also take the time and the energy to help decolonize the colonizer. And we can only do that with humanistic expressions and with a sense of purpose.
Yes. Yes. I want to recall my sister Elavie, who has reminded us that the real work is done in the informal sessions, in the lunches, and there will be future meetings. We can have all the questions and answers, and then we want to have some group photos before lunch. So I'm just going to come around 3 questions, 2 or 3 questions, and then you all can respond. Please, briefly, if you can.
Thank you so much. In our anti-dictatorship struggle in Uganda, the issue of violence versus non-violence is very prudent. And whereas the research shows that in the past, the non-violent struggles have been like 3 times more successful than the violent ones. Lately, research shows that the non-violent struggles are becoming less effective. And I want to attribute that to the growth of technology. That whereas we are talking about a non-violent-free community, a violence-free community, we are not looking at the tools of violence. For example, the guns, the technology. Some of our countries, as we are seated here, they continue to supply firearms, machinery, and weaponry, technology, to our countries where we are having dictators and occupants. So how appropriately can we have a position on this, most especially the violent tools? For example, Uganda recently, they have just bought software, spyware from Israel to spy on the political opponents. So my question is, how appropriately can we come up with a joint position as non-violent practitioners, as peace practitioners, about the manufacture and the supply of the firearms and the violent tools to the occupants and the dictators?
Okay, thank you. We know violence also causes a lot of destruction, especially when you see women, children, and persons with disabilities dying innocently without participating in any violence. And I wanted to ask, is there any from different countries in this hall to have economic movement that can able to empower innocent people, vulnerable people to take the lead, especially women, persons with disability, so that we empower our own people, the people who are supplying machine guns, their machine guns will not be used anymore. Thank you very much.
When asked about the impact of the Ibrahim deal between some Arab world state and Israel on the Palestinian people, the impact of the deal of Ibrahim on the Palestinians.
Yes, and we're going to take this final one and then you'll respond.
Yeah, thank you very much. My question to the last presenter, and it says that there is the war, and one thing he said about the religion, which it could be between the Jews and all. So I just like to understand. We know that looking there are all these two religions are there, or three of them. So what would you think it could be the best solution in that country, in Palestine, to be a best solution, and for us to put our heads together? Thank you.
Thank you. And it turns out I was wrong. I can't really deny when one of our previous panelists has their hand up. This will be the last question.
Tengo una pregunta para Rosa. Bueno, tú dijiste que los militares que tenéis ahí, cuando atacan a los militares de Indonesia, ¿qué es la reacción que pasa cuando atacan a los militares? Bueno, en mi pueblo Sahara Occidental, cuando el Frente Polisario militares atacan a los marrocos, a veces la reacción de los marroquíes atacan a la población ocupada. Bueno, yo creo que la violencia a veces no sirve para arreglar problemas.
I have a question for Rosa. I heard you say that that the armed defense for the Papua people sometimes attack the military installations of Indonesia. What is the reaction that the military then does against the population in Papua? Because in my situation, when the military of the Polisario, and if they attack the military of Morocco, then the Moroccans oppress the occupied people. And so for me, this is one of the reasons why violence doesn't work to solve problems.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, I will start first combining some of their response. So, yes, I agree, because that's exactly what we experience. When we use armed struggle to attack Indonesian army, then what Indonesia did is they will deploy more military and equipment to the conflict area. And that's happening right now. That's why, like for me personally, and many of the younger activists as well, think, okay, we should stop using violence or strategy because it will harm many of our people and it will create displacement for our people. Many people, civilian, will be killed, and that is not a solution. But at the same time, there's also a question about how we strategize, especially to stop Indonesia military and Indonesia as a state to keep getting their troops. And some of the way that we do is to build a solidarity in Indonesia. That's why I mentioned about Indonesian People Front for Free West Papua, because they're the one who are trying to push the educated Indonesian people to understand the conflict in West Papua and force their leaders to stop using military operations. Because when it's only West Papuan calling for stop militarization in West Papua, it's not effective. We need more solidarity from Indonesian people to do that. And also for other countries, especially the country who train Indonesian military and police, like the US, Australia, New Zealand gives some funding. Some countries in the Europe, like Germany, probably French, I have to check the list, but through our network in War Sisters International, I'm a member of War Sisters International, we try to also look at this, the impact or the influence of the European and other countries around the world to support or to sell arms to Indonesia, or not only trading, but also train the Indonesian military, because that's one of the campaigns that we are running at the moment. And I think to stop the armed conflict in West Papua is by stop using military force, because for West Papua, when you don't attack us, we won't attack you. Even though we have the military armed group, but they want to attack if there is no Indonesian military attack our people. They will become more like just like a defense guards rather than attacking. But when the Indonesian military started to attack our people, our mothers, our children, then they will be the one on the front. So I think that's the idea of defend people. So they actually don't want to attack because it creates a lot of killings and many people are suffering.
All right. Well, I would like to answer the question which you're going to post, because actually it concerns the work which we do in Cameroon as a civil society and as an organization. If there is a way, to empower, the local people, the common people, so that they are economically viable enough, up to the point where this trade with arms and so on. Well, in Cameroon, first of all, I think it depends on on each country. It depends on the situation at hand. And secondly, in my understanding and from my experience, it's really difficult in a conflict situation to empower people enough or empower people to the point where they get to be when their income becomes more than the income generated from arms trading and so on. It's really difficult. In Cameroon, for example, the violence has led to a situation where even farming is very difficult. Farming is almost not possible in some villages. Now, how can we actually empower these people? Now, with our organization, Sibala in Africa, for example, I think that's 2 months ago, in collaboration with IPRA, we did a training for 50 activities, that's internally displaced persons, in Yaoundé. So we empowered them on 5 different farming skills And of course, we supported 10 of them, to start up their own farms. That's one month ago. Now, that was supposed to happen in Bamenda, where we could actually have the crew, the people directly from the villages. But we have to do it in Yaoundé, those who are from the villages of the Bamenda to Yaoundé. Whereas if it was done in Bamenda, it could even create more impact because things are cheaper in Bamenda. We could even have more people in Bamenda. We could have like people who have been impacted directly and did not even have transport to go to Yaoundé. But you see, the environment of war does not even encourage economic empowerment of the common person. But I think in cases where it is possible, like in South Sudan presently, I think this is a time when the common people could easily be impacted because the war has kind of, gone down and the people have the desire to grow. So I just think it depends on the different circumstances.
Last one.
Okay, thank you. There are different questions about the Abrahamic religions or the treaty. I think there is a mistaken approach by Israel regarding that. That Israel thinks that if they have peace and normalization with Arabs, automatically the Palestinian issue will disappear. I have no problem with Abrahamic religions as religions because Christians and Muslims and Jews are part of the Abrahamic religion. But I think it should be dealt with it as that this kind of relationship with the Arab world will come after the liberation of Palestine. Second, the relationship between Arab world and Israel should be a struggle to end the occupation, and this will lead to a better relationship. Third, the issue of Jerusalem should be solved before any kind of normalization. This, if they solve Jerusalem issue and the issue of the occupation in a just way, it will lead to a better eternal peace. Otherwise, it will be a truce. Fourth, I think religion, and this is where also about Jerusalem, religion should be a resource for peace building and coexistence, and not a source for incitement and war. And that's when we talk about Jerusalem, it is not two religions. It is Christian, Muslim, Jews, as well as the whole world is involved with it. Because if there's peace in Jerusalem, there will be peace in the world. And otherwise, again, will be a truce for a while, and then it will ignite and it will be worse. The third point, and I conclude about armed struggle and things like that, I think we should really think, how can we have escalation of non-violence to end the occupation? Because there is a much bigger issue of balance of power. If any oppressed will use small items of military or struggle, the oppressor will use more. Yes, I know that there are some calls for ethics of revolution. Yes, there are some voices, even in the civil rights movement here and there, talking about you can attack the system and not the person. They say it's okay. Solution is very important. At the same time, I think we need not to give any justification for the oppressor because it's able to dominate us. Even we don't use weapons as Palestinians at this moment at a large scale, we are still demonized. Either there's a benefit for us, either terrorists, fundamentalists, or extremists. And the last point, that the social media should be used more and more because the official media is controlled by the power to be. But the power of people shouldn't be underestimated. Thank you very much.
Yes. As we wait for our brothers from West Sahara and from Tibet and from Kurdistan, I just want to say, yes, please come to the front. I want to say I don't dress randomly. This shirt from the Black Liberation Movement in the U.S., and as I said, we'll be hearing more later, speaks to still existing Black Panthers in prison. And they have a phrase I think is appropriate here. They talk about freeing the land. because the land mass of people, black folks in the U.S. Is a thing, not maybe a national thing. That's confusing. And then we say free them all. So I think with a rousing round of applause, we have to say free them all, free them all, free them all, free them all. What's the call? Free them all. What's the call? Free them all. What's the call? Free them all. Yes, more photos. Sorry, yes, more photos. Take your photos. And then.
Where is your flag? I'm sorry.
And then we don't have all the flags here. We don't have all the flags here, but we do have a plan for a group for all of us out there now. So please, let's all go out there now and take a group photo, and then let's continue the conversation over lunch and beyond. Thank you so much. Bring them all.